Some women walk into a room and, without speaking or showing the slightest dramatic emotion, they shift the whole atmosphere. As if their presence carries a language older than words. It isn't beauty alone or charm, or the brief pull of a mood. It's something quieter and far more powerful. It's the presence of a woman who has learned to choose discipline over impulse, who has learned to guide her inner world instead of being pulled around by it. In a small city tucked between mountains and the constant buzz of the modern world, there lived such a woman, or rather, the making of her. Elena was not born extraordinary. Her childhood held the same emotional storms most people experience. The subtle sting of rejection, the longing for approval, the quiet ache of wanting to be noticed. But unlike many, she sensed early on that something inside her was watching. A deeper self, a silent witness beneath all the noise. She grew up believing emotions were the truth's guide, until the day they failed her. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was a slow break, the kind that grows over years of misplaced trust, over the promises she made to herself but never kept, over moments when fear, anger, or desire spoke louder than her own clarity. Maybe you know this feeling too. Those moments when emotion grabs the steering wheel and drives your life into a place you later regret. When tears feel foreign even to you. When impulsive words burn bridges you meant to protect. Elena's turning point was quiet. No heartbreak, no crisis. Just a morning when she looked at herself in the mirror, exhaustion under her eyes, and realized she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Nothing was wrong with her face. What shook her was the emptiness behind it. The sense that she was being ruled by forces she didn't understand, much less control. That day she saw her shadow, not as something dark or mythical, but as a simple truth. Her unchecked emotions had shaped her more than intention ever had. She reacted more than she acted. She chased comfort more than clarity. She wanted to be understood, but rarely understood herself. For the first time, she asked herself a question most people avoid. What if emotion is sacred, but not meant to lead? What if discipline, not suppression, but mastery, is the doorway to becoming the woman she was always meant to be? Maybe you've wondered this too. Maybe you've noticed every powerful woman carries a certain calm, something ancient, something steady. Something that says, I lead myself. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius understood this self. Command isn't coldness, it's freedom. Emotional storms don't disappear. They just stop ruling the ship. Elena began studying old writings, teachings about the mind. Stoic reflections carved with clarity. Something in her began to wake up. She saw emotion as a visitor, not a ruler. Anger arrived and she paused. Fear rose and she stayed standing. Desire whispered, and she questioned it instead of obeying. Slowly, discipline became her foundation, not her cage. Her transformation wasn't glamorous. It was quiet, often lonely. No one praises the hours spent sitting through discomfort. No one applauds unlearning old patterns from childhood or culture. No one celebrates the nights she chose journaling over distraction. The moments she said no to people who expected her to say yes, or the times she chose silence over reaction. But here's the truth: discipline didn't make her less emotional. It made her emotions wiser. She became intentional in her love, clear in her boundaries, steady in her presence. And the world noticed. People leaned in without knowing why. Men felt a strength they couldn't easily sway. Women either admired her or avoided her. Because a disciplined woman reflects back the places others abandoned themselves. There is something almost mythic about a woman who commands her inner world. Perhaps you felt the pull toward this kind of strength, the desire to no longer fight yourself. Imagine her walking through the city. Nothing flashy, but everything about her communicates intention. Her steps calm, her gaze steady. She doesn't chase validation because she no longer starves for it. She doesn't overshare, overthink, or overextend. Her emotions still live in her, But now they move through the structure she built like sunlight guided through a window instead of scattered into chaos. And as her discipline deepened, something incredible began to happen. She started attracting only what matched her strength. Opportunities aligned with her purpose. Relationships grew from respect. Challenges refined her instead of breaking her. This is the magnetic aura people talk about, the power that rises when a woman stops negotiating with her integrity. You may not realize it, but you carry this potential too. The seed of the disciplined woman lives in every woman. The question is whether she is awake or buried under years of emotional habits. As Elena stepped into this new life, she became something timeless, a reminder that real power is quiet, self-led, and deeply aware. Her transformation didn't arrive with fireworks. It came like sunrise, slow, steady, impossible to stop once it begins. Yet every sunrise creates a little tension. Light rises, but shadows remain. No woman becomes disciplined without facing the old emotional patterns that shaped her. In the weeks that followed, Alina noticed things she had ignored for years. How she apologized too quickly, even when she wasn't wrong. How she hesitated to set boundaries because she feared being misunderstood. How her emotions surged during quiet moments, trying to reclaim control. It was as if her inner world had been waiting for her attention. And now that she finally turned inward, everything she had pushed away returned, asking to be seen. Maybe you know this feeling. The moment you choose growth, your doubts rise. Old wounds whisper their questions. Are you sure you can change? Are you strong enough to face yourself? Elena heard those questions too. Some nights she lay awake, torn between who she was and who she was becoming. But discipline showed her something she had never considered. Emotions aren't enemies, they're signals. Raw material, they turn destructive only when left without direction, like fire that can warm or burn. One winter evening, Elena sat alone in a quiet cafe near her home. The windows were fogged, the city buzzing softly outside. She watched people rushing by, their faces tense, their energy heavy. Everyone seemed to be battling something invisible. Everyone seemed ruled by their storms. For the first time, she realized she had lived that way too, reacting instead of responding. Across the room, two women whispered intensely. One cried, hands shaking. The other leaned in, equally emotional. Their energy filled the space. Elena felt their pain, but she didn't absorb it. Once she would have tried to fix it. But discipline had given her something rare, emotional sovereignty. She felt empathy, but not entanglement. Compassion, but not chaos. Care, but not sacrifice of self. This was the next stage of her growth, the understanding that a disciplined woman is not cold, she is contained. She is not distant, she is discerning. She gives, but she does not lose herself in the giving. Maybe you've felt glimpses of this too. A strength inside you that is quiet but undeniable. A calm that feels old, like it's been waiting for you. Later that night, Alina walked home under the warm streetlights. The city felt different, or maybe she did. She remembered a line she had read, "No one is free unless they master themselves." She wondered if freedom for women followed the same rule, not freedom from emotion, but freedom from being owned by it. The thought stayed with her as she climbed her apartment's stairs. Inside, she lit a single candle and sat on the floor, letting silence fill the room. She realized how rare silence had been in her old life. Always noise, always reactions, always motion. No wonder she had felt scattered. Without silence, you cannot hear the deeper voice inside you, the voice that leads you back to yourself. As she closed her eyes, something aligned in her. Her mind and body finally on the same side. Her heart no longer fighting for control. Her thoughts no longer battling each other. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. A quiet balance started to form, the kind that only steady discipline can create. And then something shifted. Not a mystical vision, but a deep emotional symbol. She saw herself as two figures. One was the reactive woman she had always been. The other was the disciplined woman she was slowly becoming. They stood facing each other, separated by a thin veil, and she understood the veil was not fear, not old pain, not even habit. It was simply identity, one self built from emotion, the other being built from intention, and the veil started to dissolve. You might feel this too. The quiet melting of an old self, the soft release of roles that once defined you. It isn't dramatic, it isn't loud. It is a gentle unraveling you barely notice, until one day you realize you've stepped into a version of yourself that feels both unfamiliar and inevitable. Elena opened her eyes. She felt different, not finished, not transformed, but claimed. Claimed by her own awareness. And people who are claimed by themselves begin to radiate a strange kind of magnetism, a presence that is both soft and impossible to ignore. Her journey was only beginning. In the days that followed, Elena started seeing the world through a new psychological lens. Every interaction, every passing moment seemed layered. She noticed patterns under the surface, quiet forces shaping human behavior. She saw it in the way a colleague's voice tightened whenever a mother called, a childhood wound still alive. She saw it in the man on the train gripping his briefcase, as if it held the only identity he had left. She saw it in friends who chased love not from desire, but from fear of being alone. And she recognized, with uncomfortable clarity, how often she herself had lived the same way, following invisible scripts she never questioned. But discipline had begun rewriting her script. Every morning, Elena practiced a very simple ritual. She woke in silence, stood by her window, and took 3 intentional breaths before doing anything else. Ancient thinkers understood the power of the morning mind, and Elena used those 3 breaths to steady her body and sharpen her attention. No phone, no noise, just presence. This small practice started to restructure her entire inner world. At work, she carried herself differently. She no longer apologized out of reflex, no longer let tone or tension pull her off center. People sensed her steadiness, and they adjusted around it. Colleagues who once interrupted her grew quiet in meetings, drawn to the clarity in her voice. Others spoke more thoughtfully, as if her presence alone required respect. This was the magnetism forming, not loud, not attention-seeking, but a field of inner coherence that others could feel. Yet as she grew stronger, Elena noticed something unexpected. The more disciplined she became, the more certain people reacted with unease. Women who once admired her sensitivity whispered that she had become too calm, too serious, too distant. Men who once relied on her emotional availability grew unsettled by her boundaries, unsure how to handle a woman who no longer reached for their approval. This is something few talk about. When a woman stops being ruled by emotion, she stops being predictable. And when she stops being predictable, she can no longer be controlled. One afternoon, sitting alone on a park bench, she reflected on this shift. The trees swayed above her, branches moving like old metaphors. She realized that when a woman stops pleasing, stops performing, stops giving away her energy just to be liked, the world often reacts as if she has broken an unspoken agreement. You may have felt this. The moment you choose self-respect over approval, and suddenly people treat you as if you've changed. But this isn't change. This is emergence. This is the real you stepping forward while the conditioned you fades. Elena also realized something deeper. Discipline had not erased her emotions, it had sharpened them. She still felt deeply, just not wildly. Her anger, once unpredictable, now came with clarity. Her sadness became a teacher of a storm. Her desire, once tangled with fear, became a compass pointing her toward real choices. This emotional precision became her quiet strength. One evening, she met an old friend for dinner, someone who remembered her as the eager, to please, overly emotional woman she once was. Throughout the meal, her friend vented endlessly, spilling frustrations without pause. Elena listened with patience and calm, but she didn't absorb the chaos. She didn't mirror the intensity. She simply held space with grounded presence. Halfway through the meal, her friend stopped, staring at her with confusion and awe. "You feel different," she said. "It's like I can't pull you into my chaos anymore." Elena didn't explain. That was the magnetism speaking. The aura formed when a woman becomes so anchored inside herself that no one can shake her center. This was the beginning of what many describe as a rising inner structure, a steady protective energy growing within. Some call it emotional regulation. Others call it virtue. Whatever the term, its essence is unmistakable. She had become the calm in the room. She had become the person others looked to without fully knowing why. She had begun carrying the weight of her soul with intention. Later that night, walking home beneath the soft city glow, Elena sensed a deeper shift. Her steps were more deliberate, her breathing slower, her awareness clearer. She saw herself not just as one woman in a busy world, but as the embodiment of something timeless, the disciplined feminine, the steady heart, the conscious mind rising above old instincts. Maybe you can feel this in yourself. The part of you that wants to rise above old reactions. The part that wants to stand firm, magnetic, unshakable. The part that longs to feel at home inside your own soul. At this point, Elena's journey was no longer about discipline as a habit. It had become discipline as identity, a spiritual and psychological awakening. And with that awakening, the next chapter began. As winter deepened and the city quieted, Elena entered a phase of deep inner excavation. Discipline had given her structure. Emotional clarity had given her vision. But now came the hardest part, the confrontation with her deepest patterns. The wounds that shaped her attachments, the quiet beliefs whispering she was not enough, or too much, or somehow broken. These whispers lived beneath her awareness like forgotten shadows. One evening, she walked along the river that cut through the city. The moon shimmered on the water, trembling with every breeze. She stopped at a quiet overlook, leaning on the cold railing, and closed her eyes. A memory rose, uninvited but needed. She saw herself years earlier in a relationship where she had lost her sense of self. She remembered giving everything, her time, her peace, her boundaries, just to feel chosen. She remembered how every small distancing from him felt like an emotional storm. She believed love meant sacrificing herself. She confused intensity with intimacy. It was painful, but she didn't turn away. Discipline guided her even here. Instead of drowning in emotion, she observed. Instead of shame, she saw the pattern, a fear of abandonment, a need for validation shaping her choices. For the first time, she whispered inwardly, "That version of you is doing her best. Maybe you feel this too. The weight of old versions of yourself, the shame for choices made out of fear rather than strength." But discipline teaches that the past is not a sentence. It is a lesson. Elena took a long breath, opened her eyes, and looked at the river again. Something inside her softened. Not fully healed, but shifted. She no longer judged the woman she once was. She no longer feared becoming her again. She understood discipline was not about suppressing the past. It was about directing the future. The next day, she returned to her life, but the world seemed to echo her inner changes. People reacted differently, not only to her calm, but to her boundaries. A man she once dated reached out, hoping to restart something he no longer deserved. Her no was gentle but firm, no hesitation, no emotional storm. The boundary was clear, but the heart was steady. At work, a conflict broke out between two colleagues. Their voices were sharp, their emotions heated. In the past, Elena would have absorbed their tension without thinking. But now she stood between them, not to fix anything, but to stay grounded. Her presence alone softened the moment. Neither of them understood why, but she did. Emotional steadiness touches everything around it. This is the quiet strength of a disciplined woman. She changes the emotional temperature of every room she walks into. As days turned into weeks, Elena began attracting a different kind of connection. People who valued depth, honesty, and real conversations. She noticed a new kind of man drawn to her, no longer the insecure or the controlling, but the grounded, self-aware men who didn't fear a woman with boundaries. Men who weren't threatened by her calm, but intrigued by it. And still, she didn't rush toward any of them. Something inside her had shifted. She no longer looked for relationships to fill empty spaces. She looked for a connection that matched her new sense of self. She had become selective, not from fear, but from respect for her own worth. One night, after a long day, she lit a candle and sat on her bedroom floor. She felt a deep stillness rising inside her. It wasn't the absence of emotion. It was the feeling of being aligned. She realized she had begun living in harmony with her inner structure. Her inner strength brought clarity. Her inner depth brought meaning. Her honesty brought truth. Her awareness brought understanding. And at the center of it all was something guiding her toward wholeness. That's when she felt it fully. The magnetic aura people sensed wasn't something she was trying to create. It was something she had become. It came from the joining of intention and feeling, discipline and compassion, instinct and wisdom. It wasn't an act, it wasn't a performance. It was the quiet result of a woman who had stopped walking away from herself. And maybe you feel that awakening too. That tiny shift. That soft call to step into your own disciplined feminine energy. To become the woman who is no longer ruled by impulse, fear, or old stories. The woman who finally belongs to herself. Alina leaned back against her bed, closed her eyes, and let the silence wrap around her. And in that silence, she understood. Discipline wasn't the opposite of emotion. It was the safe space that allowed emotion to guide her instead of overwhelm her. Her journey was nearing its final transformation. Spring arrived with a gentle warmth, almost as if the world itself recognized what was changing inside her. The air softened, the city brightened, and something within her, something quiet, something long asleep, began to bloom. Not the old emotional intensity she once confused with being alive, but a deeper presence, steady and radiant. She had crossed a threshold within herself. And now the final stage of her journey began, the rise of the woman rebuilt through clarity, discipline, and inner peace. With each passing day, Alina felt more space inside her mind. Her thoughts were no longer loud echoes bouncing through old wounds. They flowed like a calm stream, steady and intentional. She began noticing beauty she used to rush past. The way trees swayed, the sound of distant laughter, the simple warmth of sunlight on her skin. It felt as if her senses had sharpened through her inner alignment. But the biggest shift happened in her relationships. One afternoon, she met with a small group of women she had known for years. In the past, these moments overwhelmed her, endless emotional unloading, patterns of comparison, subtle manipulation wrapped in concern. But now, as she walked into the cafe where they waited, she carried an energy that gently reshaped the entire room. They talked about their lives, their struggles, their disappointments. They asked Elena for her thoughts, expecting the old version of her, the one who took on everyone's emotions, who gave more than she had, who tried to fix what wasn't hers to fix. But the woman sitting with them now was different. She listened fully, but not desperately. She offered insight, but not at the cost of her peace. She cared, but she didn't collapse into their feelings. For a moment, the table went silent. One woman stared at her and said, almost accusingly, "You've changed. You're calm in a way that's hard to explain." Elena smiled gently, not to prove anything, but because she felt that calmness inside her. She didn't need to defend herself. She had learned that explaining yourself is just another way of asking for approval. And she no longer needed it. The calm they sensed came from her finally refusing to abandon herself to match the emotional noise around her. This, too, is part of the magnetic aura. The quiet confidence that shows others what self-respect looks like without a single word. Days later, Alina found herself walking along a quiet forest trail on the edge of the city. Leaves whispered with each breeze, carrying the scent of earth and renewal. She breathed deeply, feeling the gentle pulse of life moving through her. The journey she had taken had not been easy. It required facing her patterns, questioning old beliefs, and letting go of identities that no longer fit. But here, among the trees, she understood something important. Discipline had not limited her, it had freed her. The emotions that used to rule her now moved through her without taking over. Anxiety softened into awareness. Sadness turned into insight. Desire became intention. She felt a stillness in her chest, a center that no longer shook when the world changed around her. She realized she had stopped waiting for others to choose her. She had chosen herself. And that choice had rebuilt her entire inner world. As she walked deeper into the forest, she thought of all the times she had bent herself into shapes to keep others comfortable, hoping it would make her worthy. She remembered the exhaustion of giving too much, the insecurity of seeking approval, the self-betrayal of ignoring her own intuition. But those old versions of her no longer held any power. They were chapters, valuable, painful, but closed. You might know this feeling too. The moment you realize you're no longer emotionally starving. The moment you stop reaching outward and start turning inward. The moment you understand that real peace isn't handed to you by others. It's built slowly, day by day, through discipline and love for yourself. At a small clearing, Alina stopped. Sunlight slipped through the branches, painting golden patterns across the ground. She closed her eyes and felt the quiet hum of life all around her. In that silence, something inside her settled completely. The last piece of her old identity released its hold, and she understood the truth she had been moving toward all along. Inner peace isn't something a woman finds. It's something she becomes. It comes from choosing discipline instead of impulse, intention instead of chaos, self-respect instead of approval. It is the awakening of the deep self that leads the soul toward authenticity. Alina opened her eyes with a softness that felt sacred. She felt neither fragile nor guarded, neither overly emotional nor numb. She felt whole, grounded, free. She walked forward, not toward a finish line, but into a life shaped by her own conscious will. A life where she would never shrink, chase, or negotiate for her worth again. A life where her presence, quiet, steady, luminous, would speak louder than any explanation. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her sovereignty. And maybe now, on your own path, you feel something similar, a stirring, a desire to belong to yourself fully, to rise beyond emotional reactivity, to embrace discipline not as a cage, but as freedom, to become the woman who stands firmly in her center, unshaken by chaos, magnetic in her stillness. Alina stepped into the sunlight, renewed, not from changing her outer world, but from reclaiming her inner one. And when a woman reaches that place, she no longer searches for peace. She is peace. Thank you for being here. Your presence brings life to this space. Stay with us, and together we'll keep exploring, growing, and uncovering the truths that shape the soul. Until the next video, take care, and see you soon.